at my 2-month duty roster. I go straight to my calendar and I mark down what Fridays they are and what my duty is. So when I come upon the duty speaker, the first thing I do is go into a panic. And I take a nice deep breath and say, okay, what am I going to speak about? And thanks to Tom, I now have a little more of an idea of what I'm going to do a little bit by the book. So I go and look and see what the next speech is, and it was Body Speaks, and I went, well, that doesn't help me much, because everything can be used for body language. So I flipped back to the beginning, my second icebreaker speech, and saw that I thought it was only a couple years ago, but it was March 2010 that I had given that speech, and I was like, wow, it was going to be 3 years, that really time had flown, and what had I been doing in those 3 years? And then I actually found the speech that I had written and realized what I had spoken about. For those of you who are here, I'll remind you, I spoke about where I was in my life right now. And for those of you who weren't here, I'll kind of catch you up. I was at a moment in my life where I was looking back upon the past 30-some-odd years of my life that I had grown up, gone to school, gotten married, raised children, and now was a point where my children were in their mid-20s and independent, at least physically. So that kind of physical time that I had with my kids were gone, and I had a lot more physical time open to myself. My husband of, I didn't realize I'll be 36 years married. We have grown together as a couple, but we've learned to be independent, and he did a lot of things on his own, bridge and golf and fishing and work that he's kind of getting into, gave me more physical time also. So here I was having a lot of time on my hands. I was viewing massage and teaching yoga and taking yoga, but that doesn't fill up your whole day. And if God willing, I live for another 30 years, I have a lot of time on my hands. And what am I going to do with that time? And so this speech was about thinking about what I wanted to do and telling you I was going to come back and tell you what I had figured out. And now I'm going to tell you where I am right now. So within those past 3 years, I had started researching yoga and massage, and found out there's actually a thing called yoga therapy. And it had been around for almost 40 years, at least, probably more. But as a field, it's been around for 40 years, and is taking yoga and using it as a therapeutic tool. If you've ever heard Tim McCall uses it. Dr. Weil uses it. There's physical therapists that use it. There's psychologists that use it. So it's used a lot with a lot of different modalities to help physical issues, emotional issues, spiritual issues. And I really got excited about learning about how I could take my massage practice and my yoga practice and put that together and become, if not a yoga therapist, using yoga as therapy. I read articles and publications, and I came across this man named Krishnamacharya. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Krishnamacharya. He was born in 1888, and he died at the ripe old age of 101 in 1989. And he was really the father of modern yoga. If anybody's ever taken yoga, you have learned from one of his students. Iyengar, Patanjali Joyce, Bikram, and all their disciples. So eventually you took something from him. And he took yoga from being the ascetics going up in the mountains and using it for meditation, because yoga is really, the main reason to do yoga is to strengthen your body and your soul to be able to sit and do meditation for hours. Then he took it down to the householder for using it for body aches, emotional issues, all kinds of problems that within using yoga, which yoga is more than just the poses. Yoga is much more, and that's another speech in itself, but he's taken it and made it for the common man. So I fell in love with Krishnamacharya. I mean, I totally fell in love with this man. I wish I could have learned from him, but I realized he was dead and it was no longer going to happen. So the next, just reality. So I kind of asked the powers that be that I could learn from someone who had learned straight from him or one step down. I really wanted to learn this man's philosophy, this yoga. So I went about the next 3 years, over the 3 years, studying, and I found that he had Krishnamacharya's son had started a yoga school in India, but that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to go for a month at a time and live in India. I just didn't see that happening. And I came across another man named Gary Kraftsow, and I bought his book, but his yoga was so different that I couldn't even understand what the book was trying to tell me. So I kind of put that down and started finding other schools of yoga therapy. Meanwhile, the past year and a half, two of my daughters decided they were going to get married, so my life got inundated with wedding plans and getting ready for that, and I kind of put my life again on the back burner. But after my last daughter's wedding in March, I discovered that Gary Craftsell was coming to Kansas City and actually going to give a workshop at the studio I worked in. I was very excited, and I decided I didn't care what was happening in my life, that was important to me, and I was going to go to his workshop. So the first night of the workshop, he comes and he tells about this 3 hours of lecture, just sitting there and listening to him, about him, who he was, his philosophy, the philosophy of the yoga, just everything, history of yoga. And within those 3 hours, I found out that he, in his 20s, went to India and studied with Jessica Char, Krishnamacharya's son. And in India, and I think it still happens today, when you learn from an Indian man, you go and live with their family when you're studying with them. So he would go over 6 years, like a month at a time, 6 weeks at a time, and live with Jessica Char's family. And Jessica Char's father, Krishnamacharya, lived with him. So Gary in his early 20s would sit at the feet of Krishnamacharya and talk to him and learn straight from him. So I was like, thank you, God. Thank you for sending this man to me. So I had a feeling I was going to study with him, but I really wasn't quite convinced yet. The next morning, we get there and we do a 90-minute yoga session. And this is yoga I have never done before. It is so simple. It is so easy. I'm sitting here going, this is easy. What's the big deal about this? And for 90 minutes, we did this very simple yoga, and I laid down in Shavasana, and I want to stop here for a minute about Shavasana. Anybody ever take yoga and never stay for Shavasana? Well, some people do. And the difference, Shavasana makes the difference between yoga and any other exercise. Shavasana is a time where you lay there and you do absolutely nothing. So everything you've done in the yoga session seeps into your muscles, down into your cells, it gets into your mind and into your nervous system. And all the work that you've done for those hour and 90 minutes, that's when the change happens. So when you get up from Shavasana, you've really incorporated and absorbed and assimilated everything you've done. So as I'm lying there in Shavasana, after this very simple 90 minutes of yoga, there's a couple things that happen. There's a spot in my spine right here for, over years that, you want someone to pop your back, it feels really good. Well, chiropractors, myself with yoga, hot baths could not get this thing to unpop. As I'm laying there, my back goes pop, 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 pop. And it just relaxes. I go, oh, that feels good. And then I get up and I'm walking around and I'm really enjoying how I feel. And another issue it had right here under my scapula. And it would burn and it would itch, and I noticed I was always doing this and this and trying to get that to unitch. That had left. It was gone. Totally gone. And the spine things never come back, and the scapula thing it reoccurs every so often, but not as much as it has been. There's some days and weeks that I don't even think about it. And I got up and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to study with this man. This is amazing yoga, if not for anything but myself. So I go home to my husband, I'm like mooning. Oh God, Jeffrey, seriously, I yell at him, I'm going to study with this man. I don't care what I have to do, what it takes, I'm going. And he's like, okay, Sharon, we'll talk about it. Beginning in June, I went for 2 weeks to stay with Gary and 40 wonderful people in an ashram in Virginia, in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. Just returned back in December for 2 weeks, and I'll be going again in March for 2 weeks, and then finishing in October for 2 weeks with this. And I didn't even know what I was getting myself into, but it's so amazing and it's so life-changing. And at the end of the 2 years, I'm hoping that I'll be able to share this, but as Krishnamacharya says, first you do, then you learn, then you teach. I'm loving the learning and the doing. I'm loving the doing. I'm enjoying the learning. And I look forward to sharing and teaching.